welcome again everyone, and for this special part of the club, which is the Collector Club. The bottles that are not easy to find. Fortunately, we are actually, starting to have really good relationship with winemakers, and they are keeping the wines for us in the cellar, and so we can reserve bottles that are already 7, 8, 10, sometimes even 15, 20 years old. But for sure in the future we will probably need to stop the subscription for the collectors, and so you're the lucky one that are into it. And I personally like this selection more than anyone else. We were able to create an incredible cultural biodiversity, and there are wine for every type of palate, and it will be nice to taste the wine one after the other and to see how different they are. They come from any possible region of Italy, trying to cover different grape varieties. Let's start from the first one, which is a sparkling. Sometimes I put a champagne, sometimes I put an Italian sparkling. It's not easy for me to find a good Italian sparkling, especially a sparkling that has been staying in its own yeast for a while. We're talking about here 12 years on its own yeast, 11 years on its own yeast. This is a 2011. So I might understand what does it mean to keep a wine for 10 years in the cellar for the winemaker, also from an economical point of view. The amount of bottle produced here is absolutely ridiculous. I think it's, 400 bottles. Giulia, which is behind the camera, knows more about this wine than I do, because she was recently there. We are in Alto Adige, extreme north of Italy, close to the border of Austria. Ideal condition to make sparkling because it's actually cooler climate. What I like about Alto Adige is actually how they treat the Pinot Blanc, which is usually a second grape variety in the Champagne. They usually put more privilege on Chardonnay. Pinot Blanc is a tricky grape variety. To me, needs time, the point of Pinot Blanc, because this could be slightly more fatted than Chardonnay, maybe less elegant. But in Alto Adige, with that cooler climate, mainly because of soil composition, you can have a Pinot Blanc that can be incredibly performing during the years. We did a tasting with Terlan here. That was like 4 years ago. We opened a Pinot Blanc from 1955, and it was absolutely incredible. Trust me, finding a good white wine that is 50 years old that is still good, no, 50, 60, 55 is actually almost 70 years old. It's not something easy at all in general. There are a few wines in the world, white wines, that can be aged for 70 years, 60 years. And we are not so far from the Terlan area, and Lorenz Martini actually has been dealing with the Terlan company, and he decided to make his own sparkling wine. He makes a basic sparkling, which is really good too, and that is actually his reserve. 11 years, so Chardonnay and Pinot Blanc blended together. It's so rich and powerful with a nice acidity at the end, not too much yeasty. And this is not an aperitif wine. Don't serve it too cold. So we're not talking about like 6 degrees, 80 degrees, so you can put it in the fridge, leave it, let it breathe a bit in a nice fancy glass, and enjoy it with any possible type of food. I would go with something a bit more elegant, with some white truffle plate maybe, or it could go with some elegant fish for sure, any possible fish composition. No oysters, maybe king prawns it could go, yes, raw king prawns or even grilled ones. And if you want to forget this bottle in the cellar for another 5 years, surely you're not going to get poisoned, and the wine is going to be much better. So we're going to have it here now, after our Comitissa, the Trebbiano from Emidio Pepe. Emidio Pepe is an historical producer in Abruzzo, southeast of Rome, on the other side of the sea, the Adriatico. Valentini and Emidio Pepe, they are two of the historical producers of that area. We're talking about families that are producing wine for more than 400 and 600 years, and 500 years. And usually when you have all this generation, you develop the sensitivity to time, and wine production is different from other winemakers. And Emidio Pepe is one of the few that allows you also, if you know him properly, to buy some old vintages. Some of the Emidio Pepe nowadays are sold in wine restaurants for $300, $400, $500. Prices are going up and up, following the prices of Valentini. Comparing to Valentini, I would say Emidio Pepe is slightly more rough, in a nice way. We're talking about the two grape varieties that are surely not conceived or perceived as elegant grape variety. We always perceive a Trebbiano as a grape variety that is kind of a neutral, doesn't have, for example, in France, they don't even make wine with Trebbiano, Ugni Blanc, they make cognac. And the Montepulciano is a grape variety that tend to have this ink flavor, high concentration, the opposite of a Pinot Noir, the opposite of a Nebbiolo or an Aglianico or a Nerello Mascalese. So we're more on the side of wines that are a bit more concentrated. So these are wines that needs time. So that's why I put it in the Collectors Club. Also, you're a part of a collector that doesn't exist anymore, which is the 750. It says in between the legend and the collector, so you get slightly better wine actually, the 500, and almost as the same of the 1000. You are only 10 people are part of this unique thing that started 3 years ago, and you're still there. And thank you for being so faithful for us, with us. And so 2010, 12 years already in the bottle, and I believe that 2010 was an astonishing vintage in Abruzzo, but I would say astonishing vintage all over Europe, because 2010 was great in Barolo, was great in Montepulciano, was great in Tuscany, in Burgundy, also in Bordeaux. Maybe 2009 better in Bordeaux, but still. So we're talking about wine that I'm pretty sure that can be aged up to 20, 30, 40 years. I had the Montepulciano from Pepe, was 1982. That was still an incredible wine, so 40, 41 years old. The same thing for the Trebbiano. Maybe Trebbiano not as old, but still. And so, I don't know, the only thing you have to do is to chill a bit this one here and serve it not too cold, and open these bottles maybe a couple of hours before and drink them slowly. About pairing Trebbiano, in this case, we're talking about wine that is really rich with a bit of a barnyard hay, like dry grass, and not a lot of fruit on the nose. It's more about this kind of a smoky flavor that gets into the concept of tertial aromas, not primary aromas of the wine. And you know, this is a wine that could go with turkey, it could go with beef, it could go with fish, as long as slightly fat fish, like a good nice codfish with salmon will be great. Well, this Montepulciano is something a bit more structural, I would say. Some wild boar, for example. Even pork chops are actually perfect with that. Maybe not the noble part of the pork, the fillet of the pork, more than the ribs, or beef ribs will be great. Something with a bit of a bone, something that you have to. But again, the main character here is not the food, is the wine, so keep it alone with some nice Parmigiano. It's still a great choice. Or a Caciocavallo Podolico, which is a cheese typical from Abruzzo. Hard to find outside of Abruzzo, so I don't know. My little baby, you're the lucky one to get this bottle. This is my last. I only have 2 bottles of SASSICAIA 98. Prices of this bottle are going crazy. I tried to buy in an auction and it write like 700 euros, 650 euro per bottle, and so I couldn't make it. And I don't know, if you want to bring this bottle to me next time, we can drink it together, but take care, share it with the one you really love. You have to love that person very much to appreciate this 98, which in my opinion is, I would guess, this is possible with 1988, the best vintage of SASSICAIA ever. Mixed opinion about SASSICAIA. SASSICAIA is not always a good wine, it depends on the vintage, but in a little thing as well, in the good vintages is absolutely incredible. Giacomo Takis was a genius. He passed away a few years ago, so he is still the one that made this 98, and this is the quintessential concept of Mediterranean on a Bordeaux style wine. I don't want to call it super Tuscan, you know that I don't like that way of describing wine, but this is the wine that created the name of super Tuscan. You know it more than I do. Like what, in 1972, in this blind tasting, they called the wine super Tuscan because of the fact that Tuscan wines were not so famous, and the journalist said, today I tried a wine that was not just a super Tuscan, was a super Tuscan. But the idea behind the super Tuscan is kind of vulgar. You know, I repeated this thing hundreds of times because it's like, you know, it was about copying the Bordeaux style wine. Sometimes in the late 80s, they started to copy the Napa Valley style wine that was copying Bordeaux, so it was a mistake made twice. SASSICAIA is far away from this because they don't really care what's happening outside on the marketing. And again, the 98 is beautiful, beautiful. What is the difference between 98 and SASSICAIA is the balsamic finish. It's refreshing, it's not too bold, you know, less Napa, more Bordeaux, but with a huge hint of Mediterranean that makes this wine unique and easy to recognize in a blind taste. I did something that usually I don't do, a sweet wine, a late harvest wine, and you know, normally I don't put it in the club, but I mean, we have a video of this winemaker. I might do even an extra video where my colleague Lindsay and Rachel tasted this wine in the cellar, and you see the eyes of Rachel is our friend who was on holiday. She was doing a video with us, and Lindsay is my colleague and business partner. You can see their eyes like glowing. You could see like they're flabbergasted by a wine that was totally and you know, you don't really place it. And when you talk about CINQUETTERE, because of course you're talking about a dessert wine which is sweet, which I would never match with dessert, even if it is called dessert wine. CINQUETTERE is one of the steepest vineyards of Italy. You will see the video, he will tell you everything about it, and it's so clear how it's one of the most fascinating wine regions in the world. It's one of the most fascinating regions in the world. We're talking about Cinque Terre, so you surely heard about it. We are in northwest of Italy, not so far from Genova. Everyone goes to Cinque Terre. But what is incredible is that when we did the visit at the winery, we saw these vineyards that were totally abandoned. And meanwhile, we were shooting the documentary, the little short documentary, some big stones of a few hundred kilos started to fall down, fortunately, on the other side of the mountain. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here to tell you the story. And so we were seeing this place that was collapsing due to the fact that most of the farmers abandoned it. So it's kind of a desertification of an incredible tradition that has been going on for more than 1,500 years, and probably even more. They have been building. It's like the concept of terroir there is quintessential, because they have been building those vineyards stone by stone, selecting. And also when I asked him, what do you think about the soil, which type of soil? And he said, this is an anthropic soil. What do you mean with that? Because this soil has been drained by the selection of hundreds of farmers for more than 40 generations. So it's a soil that has been affected also by the human factor. So what we have now is something that was totally artificial, but made in a natural context. And at the end you have this Bosco, which is the typical, the official grape variety, but we have more than 15 grape varieties growing there, and they used to harvest with the boat, coming from the boat because there was no road. They still do the boat harvest now. It's kind of a traditional thing that every year they do with the children. They have children adopting the plants. There are thousands of things to say about this wine, and about the tasting you will get into this incredible aromatic herbs from Mediterranean with a beautiful honey finish, and this goes, in my opinion, with blue cheese, not a strong blue cheese. It could go with foie gras. It could go somehow the same pairing you get with the Sauterne. It's a super contemplative type of wine. I'm pretty sure you're going to call me asking me for more bottles, and I will not be able to give it to you because it's finished, but so I hope you will like it. Mastroberardino. Mastroberardino is a huge winery. There is a link of the video to this wine, so you will see what we are talking about. I actually did this intro of the video that was quite scary, using the shining music because it looked like the Overlook Hotel when we arrived there. And usually when we reach our vineyards, it's a beautiful place surrounded by amazing hills. There, I thought I was in the suburbs of Detroit. It was a total dystopic environment, you know, industrial environment. And we entered this huge winery, Mastroberardino. We're talking about 1.7 million bottles. You know, I don't need to tell you about the history of the winery because Piero Mastroberardino is so good in explaining it, also in English, so you don't even need to read the subtitles. And I have to tell you, I always consider Mastroberardino. Usually we don't like to put big wineries in our wine club. We try to work with one small winemakers in the first two, for the first and the third. We're talking about like less than 500 bottles, less than 600 bottles. And so the idea, you know, Mastroberardino, you can find it everywhere. But so the idea was there somehow to provoke a bit Piero, and you know, trying to push my idea on smaller is better. And I was totally blown up by the tasting, because I know, of course, the wine from Radici, but you know, it was been a while that I was not tasting them. And we tried his new wines. It's called the Stilema. I might be putting in the wine club the next shipment. They're surely younger, but they're actually made thinking about the older way, traditional way. But then I convinced him to sell me a few bottles of his Special Reserve of 1988, which was the traditional way, was the last vintage produced by his father. So we're talking about a wine that is for sure less oak and already has 24 years in the bottle. So it's a wine that is perfectly ready to drink it now. Aglianico here is the quintessential expression with this strong, smoky, spicy, and leathery, with a bit of a hummus, like wet soil, I would say, like walking on the vineyards in a wet soil. And it's an astonishing wine. I know that this name is easy to find in the wine shops all over the world. 98 maybe not as easy to find, and I don't know at which price. I think this is a bottle that in a restaurant in New York you might find for $250 or $300, and of course here is less pricey. We're gonna go now to this beautiful wine. It's called Perillo. We have another TAURASI Aglianico, and it will be nice if you want to open in one night the two, because this is the big producer and the small producer. Again, this is another special bottle that has been aged in the cellar and released from the winemaker only 3 months ago. So we're talking about a 2005, 18 years of an incredible wine that was kept there just for us. So you better like it, I would say. Perillo is a completely different story from Mastroberardino, because we're talking about 3,000 bottles, 4,000 bottles to produce. Of this specific wine here, I think it's not more than 400 bottles. Think about the effort of a small winemaker that is able to keep these 300 bottles, 400 bottles in the cellar, not selling it, resisting to, people that want to buy it for more than 18 years. 18 years is a lot, it's almost a lifetime if you think about it. You would not, maybe when you start this project, you don't even know if you're going to see the end of it. And so I like it's moving how some of these winemakers are investing their time with a perception of time that is different from us. I don't even know what I'm going to do tomorrow night, and I freak out if they ask me to organize a holiday this summer. And these guys were actually planning their life for the next 17 years. Comparing to this one here, I would say that this will be slightly more richer and slightly a bit more tannic because of the youth of it and also because of the structure. I don't know which one is better. This is not a challenge. It will be really nice for you to open both of the wines. I would say the pairing will be similar. Maybe we'll go this bit more pork chops and a wild boar, something with a bit more fat to compensate the tannins. But, two beautiful masterpieces that is kind of an homage of Aglianico. Everyone is talking about Aglianico, but not a lot of people knows exactly what Aglianico is. I know you can find this bottle almost in every supermarket nowadays, even if it is an expensive bottle. Well, the price could be from 120 to 250 euros, more or less, depends where you find it. And so does it make sense to put a Dom Perignon or a Krug in a selection? And first, we already have it at home like this. You don't have to go down to the shop. But, the idea is to think about how and why I select a certain kind of wines. So it would be nicer to compare this one here and here, because they stay both of them 10 years in its own yeast. This is a blend of different grape varieties, of course. I give you a couple of tips also. All the technical information of this wine, there is an ID number. You go to the Krug site, you write the design ID number, and it tells you everything. And 169, and from 167, 168, and 169 Cuvée, I think the Krug went back fortunately to the older style. The older style is before Krug was bought by Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, in which, in my opinion, they started to change a bit the style, also due to the fact that they had a series of warm vintage like 2000 and 2003. And I don't know, the idea that Krug usually had like a slightly higher acidity was perceived to be a wine different. There is champagne, and then there is Krug, that's what we used to say. It is surely my favorite champagne, has always been, and it's a kind of an homage of it's actually my tradition in wine somehow. We're talking about a wine, Ric Lebel, which doesn't work with them anymore. I think this was the last Grand Cuvée he produced. He was absolutely a genius. He's still a genius. And the way they were actually selecting the Cuvée, they have more than 10 different vintages actually in this wine, blended together, the way they treat with the winemakers, and they control how all the grapes has been harvested and raised using the right amount of fertilizers and not too much chemicals on an organic side. And Krug is Krug, and there's no point for me to present a wine that is astonishing by itself. Blue Cerchiale, another big winery that I love. We did a few tasting with the winemaker here. What they are doing, these guys are incredible, is incredible because they are able to make quantities and quality